Good evening, everybody, and welcome to For Fantasy Sake's Short Yardage. I'm DJ Jarvis. The show's going to be ran tonight by your normal hosts, Nick Gural and Michael Sicoli. I'm just here right now to make a short announcement. We at For Fantasy Sake here have agreed to terms with a deal with Mobile Party Experience here at the Quad Cities. They are the premier source for all your tailgating entertainment needs, which will come. Hi, Doug.
Hey.
They'll bring out you a trailer so you can watch your sporting events. That's especially going to be key here in a couple weeks with college football ramping up with the Hawkeyes around here. I know that you're going to see a lot of these trailers. So throughout the football season this year, you're going to see a lot of Mobile Party Experience branding. In the next couple of weeks, we're hoping to get their branding rolled out. And that's actually going to start in about right now. So this is the new look to Short Yardage. We got everything up there. The Mobile Party Experience For Fantasy Sake experience is off and rolling, and we look forward to a good relationship with them this year. So
awesome.
I'm out of here. I'm going to try not to end the live like I did last time I was on a show. So enjoy, and I hope everybody enjoys the show, and we're looking forward to a fun year.
All right. See you guys. Have a good show.
See you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good to have both of them stopping in there. No better way to start Short Yardage than with some FaceTime from Deej and Doug. So how you doing, Nick?
We gotta respect our elders out here, especially with the
elders.
The new our forefathers, the people that laid the groundwork. That wasn't an ageist joke, I promise. But yeah, we're preseason week 1. We're gonna dive in. It's almost like surreal, like it's here, right? But there haven't been any like big blockbuster things that have happened. But what has happened is some preseason usage that we should pay attention to. So I'm excited to jump in and see, cut through the noise a little bit and find the things that matter.
Yeah, no, and it's satisfying to say we got 1 week of football done, and albeit it's preseason, but it's 1 week closer to the weeks that actually matter. And I'm going to start off by saying thank goodness and crossing my fingers we got through that week without any major injuries. Hoping we keep that trend going, but that is the biggest win to me. Biggest takeaway even there. But do you want to kick us off, or do you want to? What did you notice from week 1?
Well, we got 3 topics we're going to hit on today. We got preseason week 1 news and notes. We're going to talk about some injury talk, and then we're going to take a look at some depth charts, specifically looking at some RB situations that, if we can get them right, we should gain a lot of ground on the field in our fantasy football draft. So kicking things off, what are some interesting things that you got from the first week of preseason, Mike?
Yeah, so there was a lot to take away, but the biggest thing I looked at was that Jacksonville situation. So we exited last offseason with James Robinson as an undrafted hero, great year, great asset, RB1. And then they went out and spent a first-round pick on Travis Etienne, and ever since, and not just that, but they also spent a few million to bring in Carlos Hyde, reunite him with new head coach Urban Meyer, and ever since we've been wondering, where's the value going to come? Does Urban Meyer know how to properly use this backfield? And we got the first glimpse at it, and James Robinson got the lead, which it shouldn't surprise anyone. A lot of people are saying, James Robinson isn't going away. He got seven of those first-team snaps with Trevor Lawrence. Etienne got 5, and Carlos Hyde got 3. So that reads into a little murky situation right there. But James Robinson was always going to get this veteran nod, this incumbent nod. He's the guy he's the guy who's been there. He deserves to get that first rock. And what I take away from it is he's not going to go away. James Robinson's going to nag into this season. He's going to get a few, maybe 1 to 2 catches. He's going to get those short yardage situations. He might get the goal line work, but Carlos Hyde might get utilized. Carlos Hyde ran 3 routes on the 3 snaps he ran, which is inexplicable to me. And Etienne will get his moments. He'll catch some balls, but I don't know if we'll see enough consistent usage. And if you look at their ADPs, you got James Robinson as the RB28 in the back of the sixth, Etienne at RB21 in the middle of the fifth. Between those two, I'll take the shot on Etienne. At the end of the day, the first round pick's going to win out. 5 snaps to 7 snaps in week 1 is not a big disparity to me, and I do think Etienne's the better player. So, what did you take away from that backfield?
It was. I'll tell you this, Mike. It was beautiful to hear you just talk yourself into Travis Etienne, which is the correct move here. It's the correct move. You hit all the points. James Robinson's a great story, but he's not Urban Meyer's guy. You know?
No, he's not.
Honestly, he's talented. He's going to get some work, but throughout the day, like the electrifying fantasy football plays that we want, the big gains, the catches, like that's going to Etienne. Like that's Urban Meyer's shiny new toy. I feel like if he has it his way, like that's the one player that he wants to be featured. That's the guy who's going to get the ball when it matters.
And the one connection I think between, we say Urban Meyer drafted him. This is also Trevor Lawrence's go-to dump down right there. Trevor Lawrence and Etienne were dynamic together in college, especially with the injuries Clemson had at wide receiver sometimes. So, Etienne caught the ball early and often. I think Lawrence is just going to look his way for a round difference. I'll take a first-round running back, which has historically been great for fantasy football.
Yeah, that's a good point too. Like these are the types of guys we want to take shots on. What would you say his ADP was back of the
Travis Etienne's going in the middle of the 5th as the RB21. Okay. James Robinson's going in the back of the 6th.
Yeah, you got to take. So, like I said, that 5th round, like for me, like I like to start wide receiver heavy. I may sprinkle in a running back there if one falls that I like. But having 4 wide receivers and then taking your RB1, if it's Etienne, you can feel really good about that. Just because those are the types of players that end the year as like Etienne could be going in the 1st round next year. Like if things fall his way, maybe an injury, Carlos Hyde goes the way of Tim Tebow being like Urban Meyer's dude, but like not ready for an NFL football field anymore. I think like at a certain point, Urban Meyer's like power is like only goes so far where like Tim Tebow was asked, like he got cut because it wasn't safe for the other players on the field for him to be on the field. I don't think Carlos Hyde's like that out of the realm of involvement here, but Carlos Hyde will not be a factor.
Carlos Hyde in running back years is equal to Tim Tebow at age 36 or 34, whatever he's at.
Yeah, but I'd like to bring up another interesting situation. One that's seems a little bit unclear, but to me, like I'm telling you, like this is where we make our money, fellas. And ladies, I don't mean to narrow our audience there, but Trey Sermon, his usage in the first preseason game was very, very interesting. These are the types of things that we need to pay attention to, and people don't because it's tedious. So he was in of 10 out of 12 first team snaps. Okay. Mostert was sitting, so that is information that this is a small sample. We need to take into account that Mostert is going to be involved. So he's in a 10 of the 12 first team snaps. Wayne Gallman was the other back end, and they actually subbed Gallman out on a clear passing down and put Trey Sermon in, which was not what we were expecting. We were kind of profiling Sermon to be this like bruising between the tackles, between the 20s, maybe the goal line kind of back. He wasn't used like that in the first game. He was used more of like an all-around kind of workhorse, right? And this team they're going to run the ball 600 times, right? That's the Shanahan offense. Like they project to be the run heaviest offense this year. And they have room for like a workhorse back and then also kind of like a flash player like Mostert. Like there's enough carries to go around. So I'm projecting Sermon for 200 plus touches. I want to say 250, but that's a little bold at this point. They love him there. He's like Trent Williams. One of his linemen is like can't say enough about him. And I pay attention to when the players, the people that like actually know football and like are blocking for him, like when they say stuff about a player, like it matters, coaches kind of defend people. Like I felt like a Williams unfiltered moment where like Sermon's our guy. So I'm all in. I got to have him in the 8th round for sure.
Sermon's a fantastic target because like you said, the volume in San Francisco is going to be there. It might be divvied up, but Raheem Mostert can't carry the ball more than 15 times a game. He can't hold up to that. Then you have Jeff Wilson, who's already injured. They drafted Elijah Mitchell in the 6th round. He's also dealing with a little hamstring issue. So it's like it's tradition, it's injuries in San Francisco, but they traded up in the 3rd round to get Trey Sermon. They didn't have a lot of draft capital, but they chose to do that. Trey Sermon is also like, we say like, wow, we didn't really project him to catch passes, but who else would? Raheem Mostert's never been a pass catcher. Wayne Gallman isn't anything special, especially in the receiving game. And Elijah Mitchell's a 6th round rookie as well. So if they're going to throw to the running back, even if it's 40, 50 times in the season, I think that's Sermon's role to lose, because unless they bring someone in, which I don't project, there's no one else on that roster that can do that.
Mike, are we officially at Short Yardage? We're officially a Trey Sermon podcast.
We are. It's annoying because I tweeted out before the draft, right? If the one person that's going to shoot up in draft boards is Trey Sermon based on landing spot, because I wasn't a huge Trey Sermon guy coming out. I kind of viewed him as a straight line runner, but when it comes to the zone blocking scheme in San Francisco, it doesn't really matter. He's got 4 years there. He's going to be very utilized. And Mostert's not going to stay healthy either. Jeff Wilson's already not healthy. It's a productive offense. He's going to have a featured role.
Yeah, and just to kind of let's wrap up the rookie roundup for running backs here before we jump into some QB talk. Javonte Williams, man, that guy can just break some tackles. He's going in the 6th round now. All systems go. That's what I'm saying. It's a lot more fun and less risky, and will probably be more profitable just to target these rookie running backs where you can get value on them. Load up early on tight ends, QBs, wide receivers, and just go for. And then Michael Carter, again, he kind of just he didn't mix. I don't know. He didn't wow us. You know what I mean? He was in there. Let's say this. His usage was more encouraging than Myles Gaskin, which we're going to talk about later. So Michael Carter, all systems go in the 10th round. Maybe you have to reach for him in the 9th. But let's jump into some of these QBs. What did you see out of some of our young signal callers?
I think every single one of them had a very promising debut. Like a lot of people, I'll start off with Trey Lance. He had that beautiful 80-yard touchdown throw, which was I physically smiled as I watched that play. So
that's what we like to see.
No, it was something to see. And then and then people make a lot of the 4 for 15 stat line. But if you watch the game, because you can't look at box scores. I said this a couple weeks ago in our preseason wrap up. There were drops. Like Trey Lance is going to miss throws, but there were drops, and you can't blame them on Trey Lance. Zach Wilson did what I think Zach Wilson's going to do, which is why he's going to find Corey Davis. And I mean, we got to see. That's someone I'm looking at this year. I'm looking at this week. I don't think he was challenged at all with the Giants defense in that scrappy unit. I want to see how it looks against the Packers this week. Justin Fields looked amazing. Go for it. Let
me touch on Lance and Wilson real quick before you move on.
Yeah.
Lance is going from the 12th, just to put a little bit of cold water on it. Like you said, he didn't look as great throwing the ball. He looked like a rookie QB out there, which is okay. We got plenty of time. I do think that he will come in sooner rather than later. There's a couple starting to whisper out there that the week 1 starter will be Lance and the week 1 starter will be Justin Fields. So we'll talk about Justin Fields in a second, but Lance did take some sacks. He missed some throws, but I mean, he showed the athleticism, hit an 80-yard bomb. Like they're going to get him more reps with the ones. And then Wilson's going in the 14th round. He's basically free. He's just one of the reasons why I'm okay with waiting at quarterback, because he could get there through rushing alone, give you a good floor, and just kind of be electric. And I really like what they're trying to do there and with the Jets. But like you said, Fields, I think, Andy Dalton is saying that it's his time. It's time for him to go. He loves Fields. He thinks he's going to have a great career. But Fields looked great. I think he probably looked the best out of any of the rookie quarterbacks, both in the box score and like through the eye test. He had a rushing touchdown, a lot of good throws. the incompletions he had were like him kind of going for it, which is what we like to see in our fantasy quarterbacks, that kind of gunslinger mentality. But he was playing with second string wide receivers, and they weren't really able to go up and get it. Our boy Allen Robinson out of Penn State, stand up. He'll go get that ball for our boy Justin Fields. What did you see out of him?
That the one play I don't know if people watched it, but there was a play where he rolled out to the right. He knew there was going to be a receiver open in the middle of the field. I don't know if you remember this play. He stared down the running back in the flat, caused the linebacker to drag outside, and then he hit the wide receiver and got a first down. It was an 8 to 10 yard play, but it spoke volumes to the critics that say, he can't read a defense, he can't play on the field. It's plays like that where if you looked very closely on tape, he can make those plays. Ohio State might not have asked him to do it all the time, but he can do it. So I'm Andy Dalton, it's not your time. He's going to get fed to the Wolves against the Rams in week 1, and we're going to see Justin Fields in week 2. So if you want to try to hold him through week 1, I think that's worth seeing. And as for the 49ers, I think we're going to see Jimmy G start the year. And I think it's going to be a little bit because they start the year Detroit and Philadelphia. That the 49ers should handle each of those teams. But then they have a 3-week stretch of Green Bay, Seattle, Arizona. Those are losing those. I wouldn't be surprised if the 49ers drop those games. So, and then they have a week 6 bye. I'm going to say week 7 we see Trey Lance, which might be a tough debut against Indianapolis, but I think
week 7.
I think that's what it's going to be. Jimmy G, if Jimmy G is healthy, if Jimmy G lasts till week 7, I mean, maybe you say week 5, but I think they'll take till the bye week. I don't know. I don't even know if we'll Jimmy G.
We'll know in the next couple of weeks.
Jimmy G isn't terrible. That's the problem. He's not a bad
Trey Lance is being taken in the 12th round right now.
Yeah.
That's basically saying that he's not going to start the year as a starter.
I don't think he will. Yeah.
If the next 3 weeks, if you're drafting like now, which a lot of people aren't drafting quite yet, like the next 2 weekends are going to be crazy for drafts.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're drafting maybe this weekend, we probably won't have a super clear picture. Lance is great in the 12th. If we still don't know if he's going to be the starter week 1, I'm probably not going to take him in drafts. I'm going to wait for someone to have to drop him and pick him up on the wire. So one guy that we don't have to worry about that with, he's going to be the starter from day 1, despite what his own coach is saying. Trevor Lawrence, he is who we thought he was. He makes good throws. He elevates the people around him. He made 3 of his 4 tight windows throws. That's according to NFL's Next Gen Stats. That is a 75% clip, obviously in a small sample, but that is better than there was no quarterback on the Jags last year that hit tight window throws at that rate. So he's going to be the starter. He's going to be awesome, but for some reason people are sleeping on him. I don't think I'd be surprised to see him move up to like the 8th round by the time people start to draft at the end of the month.
Well, now they're worried about Minshew being the starter, Nick.
I don't know that they are. He just hasn't had the hype that he should, Like,
no, it's
there's a lot of shiny new toys. It's like we know what he's going to be, and it's going to be awesome, and we're just taking that for granted. But people just draft him.
It's been this way for months. People have been overthinking Trevor Lawrence ever since the draft. There were the people that were coming out to saying Justin Fields is better than Trevor Lawrence. They were saying that Trey Lance has a higher ceiling than Trevor Lawrence. All that matters is that Trevor Lawrence is a generational talent that has not changed. He's in the 10th round right now, and I'll take him in the 10th round happily.
Oh, I love that's like right where like Lamar Jackson his rookie year. He won people leagues.
Yeah.
That's
Josh
Allen last year who won people leagues.
We also have to factor in he did this without DJ Chark as well. Like he had Marvin Jones out there, who's going to be a terrific value in drafts, as I wrote down in one of our in the draft guide, which we'll talk about a little bit later.
Just get your lunch pail. Just get your lunch pail and draft Marvin Jones. Go to work.
Exactly. It's Trevor Lawrence is a good pick, and Marvin Jones is a great value. Laviska is a nice little sleeper. Yeah.
Here's a quick little, as someone who might have overthought this, I had the 101 in a dynasty draft this summer, and I traded it away for what ended up being the 104, which turned into Trey Lance, famous Jameis Winston, and 2022 first. I think the gap between Lance and Lawrence, I think that's close. I need Lance to hit in a big way, but how do you feel about that trade?
I would have. I was saying this to a few friends throughout the entire offseason on how much I wish I had the 101 in a super flex because if I had it, it was untradeable to me. I'm just
Well, I
rocking
did.
with Trevor Lawrence.
What you seem to like Trey Lance too, though. So
I
that's not
don't
enough to
mind
close the gap.
Trey Lance was still my QB4 in the process, and landing in San Francisco is very nice. But
He was your QB4?
He was. I had him behind Wilson. I had Fields as my number 2.
Okay, you like Wilson a lot more than I do.
Yeah, and I had him confidently ahead of Mac Jones as well. I had him closer to Wilson than I had to Jones. But
Okay.
I just view with Trevor Lawrence, it's as much of a can't miss prospect because who can also run. Nobody talks about Trevor Lawrence's rushing ability nearly enough. He's going to add, like I see a Russell Wilson type of rushing outfit from an early career rush. Like add 350 rushing yards, 400 rushing yards. That is a very viable addition right there. I think we should probably move on to our next little bit. But there's nothing I like more than talk about rookies.
Yeah, we're not talking about Mac Jones because he doesn't run. In 3 years, he might throw 45 touchdowns and be a good fantasy quarterback, but maybe you'll stream him this year. He looks fine.
And he plays tonight, so we'll see how he looks with a little bit more time. I still expect Cam Newton to start week 1.
Yeah, let's talk about these injuries.
Okay, so we have some more positive news. We saw Carson Wentz out of Indianapolis, where Carson Wentz and Quentin Nelson are now all of a sudden looking a little bit more likely to start week 1. And given Carson Wentz's wonderful 5 to 12 week timeline, when you go something that wide, I'm sure it's possible he plays week 1. I think more likely than not, I think we're going to see him held out week 1. I think we're going to see him week 2. But Quentin Nelson could be back week 1. I think that's possible. And all in all, the positive news that I'm hearing, I'm not changing my draft, how I view the Colts prospects. I'll still take JT in the first round right now.
Yeah. So Jonathan Taylor there kind of wobbled around a little bit. He was going like 6 overall, which
he was.
I think we kind of pumped the brakes on that a little bit, rightly so. He's going to go at the back end of the first round, I think, especially because of a little more security. Like we're going to see Wentz early. We're not going to have to wait till week 5 to see Wentz or week 6. And so Jonathan Taylor is back in play. That's how all of these are at their current ADPs. All of these players, Pittman, Paris Campbell is a sleeper. All of these guys are kind of back in play at their ADP. So I'm feeling a lot better about Indianapolis as a whole. It's kind of a messy fantasy football situation in a perfect scenario. So I don't even know if getting it right, quote unquote, will even matters because Sirianni just rotates at tight end. He rotates at wide receiver. He rotates at running back, which those types of coaches don't usually help us out a whole lot in fantasy.
The thing is, I do think I think what you said about Jonathan Taylor is correct. I think that's the person I'm still pretty in on because RB6 was high for him. For someone who I can't guarantee passing work, for an offensive line that lost their left tackle and lost Quentin Nelson for a stretch and possibly his starting quarterback for a stretch, then he slipped. But at RB9, every year we see a second-year running back take a lead. This is still a good offense. This is still a very well-coached team, and Jonathan Taylor will get every carry that he can handle. Jonathan Taylor, if I'm not correct, Jonathan Taylor was an RB1 last year. He was the RB4, RB6 in PPR. So what changes? He loses the left tackle. He gets an improvement at quarterback, and he's being drafted as the RB9. I think I'm all about taking Jonathan Taylor at the 112 right now. And that's where he's going in 12 teams.
He gets a little bit more pass. We talked about this before. He gets a little bit more pass work than people think. He'll get about 30. He'll get you about 30 balls.
Yeah.
But does he? He's definitely someone you can go. If you can, let's say people kind of get a little. Maybe Travis Kelce goes in the first, right? Maybe goes in in the top 6. Maybe someone drafts Devontae Adams and Tyreek Hill go, and you're sitting there at the 11, 12 or the 12.
12-1
turn, right? Yeah. So if you're able to take in a 12-team league, like Jonathan Taylor, Saquon Barkley, or Jonathan Taylor, Aaron Jones, I'm all for that. That's a great start. But let's move on. Baltimore, man, they're just cursed. Mark Andrews left in an ambulance today. I think he's going to be fine. It just seems like he was severely dehydrated. and had some pretty bad cramping. But I mean, he collapsed. It was that type of thing where, like, I mean, if you've had cramps before, like, it's like the worst. But Bateman's out. Marquise Brown and Sammy Watkins are dealing with nagging stuff. Like, what's the word on Baltimore? What do you think?
I mean, from what I hear about Rashad Bateman, I think it's the back end of September, early October is about the timeline, which means that's a real shame for him. Marquise Brown, I think we're still having optimism that we see in week 1. I saw he was out there walking through routes, not fully running through routes, but given another 3 weeks, I'm sure he'll be out there. While Mark Andrews is the one of this offense, and while yes, he did collapse it, what I think, and I don't think people have really made the connection yet, was DeMarc Andrews has diabetes. I know I've talked to people who have it, people who have that in extreme heat, who aren't well hydrated, who are dealing with those cramps. The ambulance is something where I think it's just an abundance of caution. I think, they might hold him out a week just to make sure he's right, but I think Mark Andrews is going to be fine health-wise, God willing. But, it's a mess. They won't be able to pass the ball as much as they want to. And if they do, I think we might see Dobbins lining out in the slot a little bit more than we were projecting. And maybe Gus Edwards gets a little more carries.
That's a scenario like where the fantasy football community as a whole, the analytics guys like me, will really have their foot in their mouth if J.K. Dobbins like splits out wide, all of a sudden gets like 50 targets.
Oh my God, I wish.
I don't see that happening. That'd be pretty incredible. I'd be all for it because it means that they're airing it out more. But
it makes sense. But not everything that makes sense.
Like, I'm confident enough. I feel like you can still draft the Ravens, right? You can still go after Lamar. You can still go after Mark Andrews at the back end of the 4th. Sometimes he'll get to the 5th where I'm smashing the button every time if he's there in the 5th. Lamar Jackson's going
4th, 5th round. Like it's not out of my draft range, but I tend to avoid the 4th, 5th round.
It's tough to get both of them, but I mean, you can still take Lamar Jackson and Mark Andrews if you're confident that you can get through September with the rest of your lineup. So
you could also grab Bateman with You grab Damien with your last positional pick and then stash him on your IR as well.
I can see Baltimore being a great finishing team this year. Where
they're going to score points.
The first 8 games, they might struggle a little bit just because they're kind of not healthy, but I think they'll get healthier as the year goes on. I think as they add back pieces of that passing offense, they'll start to pass more, and they'll be more competitive in real life football because of that, and they'll be more competitive in fantasy football because of that. But like I said, it is a bummer because I was so excited to see them coming out of the gates with all these new receivers, and I thought that they were going to kind of shock people, kind of like the Bills did last year. The Bills were projecting to be a run-heavy team last year, if you can wrap your head around that.
Yeah.
So we can move on to what are you seeing out of Cowboys camp with Dak?
Well, I talked about it last week, how I wasn't really worried about the shoulder. I don't think you were either. And he is back in limited type of fashion. He's not going to be getting hit anytime soon. He's not throwing at full speed, but he's out there throwing. And I said it from the beginning. I think this is just precautionary. I think they're doing everything they can to keep him just healthy and ready for week 1. And teams do this all the time. Teams take preemptive measures. Like remember Alvin Kamara getting those back injections like 5 days before week 1, and then people drafting were like, oh my God, and he slipped to like the mid back end first, and then he finishes the RB1. So I'm all about Dak Prescott this year. I'll take him in the back of the 5th, and where he tends to slip sometimes to those people who just don't want to deal with the question mark, or they're insistent that they don't want to take an early quarterback. If we're projecting Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb to be top 20 options, top 15. And then we're saying that, the Cowboys are going to score points. That's why we're drafting Zeke in the 1st round. Dak Prescott's going to throw for plenty, and he's going to throw plenty of touchdowns at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. So for me, like I'm probably not just going to target Dak in redraft this year that much, just not because I don't think he's going to smash. It's just because he does carry a little bit more risk than guys that I could go. Like if I'm going to take an elite QB, I'm probably going to take a Kyler, Josh Allen, Mahomes. And because I feel like Dak's kind of playing catch up to them, even in a perfect condition, just because he doesn't quite run as much as Josh Allen or Kyler. And I mean, he's not Patrick Mahomes because nobody is. But yeah, what I am optimistic about is his weapon. So like I'm all in on CeeDee Lamb, who, my goodness, on Underdog is going in like the second round now. It's crazy. But everywhere else he's going in the third. So I mean, CeeDee Lamb, people, get out ahead of this. Like in your leagues, if CeeDee Lamb is there in the third round, like take it and like count yourself lucky. But yeah, because a lot of those pieces are contingent on Dak being healthy. So it looks like he's ramping up. Like I said, not going to invest high capital with that injury risk, but I'm definitely gonna invest in those weapons in Dallas.
Okay, so let's say he's practicing in full come September 1st, August 30th. Okay, then you're on the clock. Would you rather have, because this is what ADP says right now, would you rather have Amari Cooper and Dak Prescott, or would you rather have Kyler Murray and Deontay Johnson?
Ooh,
because
that's
the one round. There's a 1 round difference between Dak and Kyler, and there's 1 round difference between those two. So that's a realistic thing. You get that Dallas stack, or you could take the Kyler upgrade and take Deontay. See, I'm taking Dak and Cooper there.
Yeah. I guess I don't really love Cooper that much, just because I think he doesn't really. He's a good real life wide receiver, and he'll spike for some monster fantasy games, but he's very sensitive to like good matchups, which I'm not. Whereas like CeeDee Lamb just smashes because he's in the slot a lot, no matter who he plays against. That's the type of player I think he's going to be. But yeah, I could definitely see Dak and Cooper. I think from a value perspective is probably the way to go.
Yep. And it's worth throwing out on the topic of Dallas that Cooper intends to play. He's back at practice. He's running routes. He's trying to get out there for tomorrow's preseason game, or Saturday's preseason game. So Amari Cooper's ankle, I think we're almost at the point of calling that past news, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
He just is a slow healer. I think we talked about it. He has a vitamin D deficiency, which that's helpful to know. One, like that sucks for him, but it is valuable information. Like he might not be a player that you start coming off of an injury right away. You might want to sit him for another week, which again makes him less valuable in fantasy football. Let's talk about some running back depth charts, Mike. What do you think?
Well, before you do that, do you want to answer the question that Fen just put in the chat, or do you want to save that for the end?
What's the let's do a question.
Okay, so we got a little question in here: Travis Etienne or Kareem Hunt in full PPR? See, for me, that it's not really too much of a question of I'm taking Etienne. Between the upside, it's a good question because they're going back to back in drafts. I think Kareem Hunt's the RB20, Etienne's the 21. It's very close like that. But in terms of upside, Kareem Hunt doesn't have the top 15, even top 20 to me upside without Nick Chubb being injured, and injuries is not something you can really predict. And
I agree with that for sure. Because we like Etienne, like regardless of if James Robinson and Carlos Hyde is there, like he could be so good and like prove himself as a la Jonathan Taylor last year, and just be so good that he earns a bell cow role. Kareem Hunt, when Nick Chubb did go down for about 6 weeks last year,
he was fine.
6 weeks. He was fine, but he wasn't a bell cow. He wasn't like he didn't spike in fantasy points like we thought he might, which was a little disappointing. It could just be bad luck. But I mean, and also like we're here to have fun, right? So like Etienne's the more fun pick there for sure because there's a little bit more unknown upside that might not be accounted for in that price.
I think Etienne in his current situation does more than Kareem Hunt in his current situation. I think Etienne has just a very similar role, albeit on a worse team. And Etienne has has a very realistic route to being not a bell cow, but having a larger role in the rushing attack than I think Kareem Hunt does. But you want to get into the backfield?
Yeah. Let's keep it moving with some backfields. We can kind of go quickly through these. Just a word of caution here. Houston, avoid the suck. I think there's some people that say maybe not the best backfield to be targeting overall, but right now, Philip Lindsay goes in the 13th round. David Johnson goes in the 10th. Don't draft David Johnson. Draft Philip Lindsay. He's gonna reports coming out this past week that Philip Lindsay is like the 1A there, and David Johnson's going to kind of mix in on passing downs. That's not something that we can take to the bank. That could change in the next few weeks, but as of right now, we need to take advantage of what we know. And Philip Lindsay, I mean, he's great in the 13th round if he's going to be the 1A there. And I say that I kind of believe in this. I think this is some pretty good signal because David Johnson, when he talked to the press, was like disappointed. He's like, yeah, I guess I just got to deal with what I'm given, like
he sounded defeated.
He sounded defeated. Yeah. So
he sounded like a man who accepted his role, and that role is third downs. And that could be valuable in Houston, but unless that ADP slips, which I think it easily can with this news, I'm not spending a 10th. I think it's possible that this evens out where David Johnson ends up in the middle of the 11th, Lindsay ends up in the middle of the 12th, and the round difference isn't much. And I could see myself trying to take the receiving end of David Johnson, because if Philip Lindsay's proven anything over Denver, that he can run the ball pretty well, but he's not going to pass. He's not going to catch the ball. Yeah. So that might be more valuable in a team that projects to lose as many games as Houston does. But I think you're right. I will take Philip Lindsay, especially if he's going later, just because I think he's the better player. He's got a little bit more juice. If I can help it, I will avoid this entire team.
We've gotten to the point where, like you just said, Philip Lindsay is the better player with David Johnson, and you're not wrong. Like
David Johnson has won me plenty of fantasy championships. I love David Johnson.
David Johnson was like going top 10 in like dynasty startups 2 years ago.
2 years ago, Todd Gurley went in at the 112 in my dynasty startup. Life comes quickly for fantasy running backs.
And yet these people still keep drafting running backs. I don't get it.
Okay, all right. Buddy.
Speaking of some running backs that might be burning some people if you've been drafting him in best ball, whatnot. Myles Gaskin, really troubling usage coming out of Miami. Gaskin doesn't really seem to be the guy. He played, I think, 7 out of 24 first team snaps. Ceded a lot of work to Malcolm Brown, who looked really good. Who the coaches just love this guy. I'll circle back to that in a second, but Gaskin, not only did he play only 7 out of 23 first team snaps, he played deep into the second quarter, which that tells you that I don't know, maybe he like was late to a practice or something. Like we've seen these like football guy coaches, which I'm not really sure where Brian Flores is on that spectrum. But we got to keep an eye on this. Myles Gaskin goes right now in the 6th round. I think he's falling into the 7th or even 8th
he is rapidly falling right now.
So he's falling. Like I'm kind of buying the dip because Flores, there's been reports that he loves Gaskin. Like they gave him the bell cow work before. We've seen this with Malcolm Brown. Malcolm Brown last year before the season was like everybody's like 0 RB target because he got a lot of work in the preseason game. 2 years ago, Malcolm Brown was like another 0 RB target because he got a lot of work in like game 1, like when someone went down, when Todd Gurley went down or something. Like Malcolm Brown is that guy where like he's great and the coaches love him because he's a hustle guy. He's a lunch pail guy, first in, last out. But then he gets out there on the field and doesn't produce when they need him to. Like Myles Gaskin can do that. So again, this is one that I'm monitoring. I'm not panicking yet if I'm a Gaskin owner in Dynasty. Just holding right now, maybe even buying the dip where you can. How do you feel about the Miami backfield?
Yeah, I'm not drafting Myles Gaskin. That's kind of how I feel, and I think there's value to be had, but Myles Gaskin and just to walk through how he was valuable last year. Myles Gaskin saw almost 200 touches in just 10 games, and that's 10 games he showed up in. That's not including the games that he got injured in and then left early. Or the games where he wasn't really utilized because Gaskin was force fed, and this was a different offense. We like to cite Brian Flores because he did a great job with Miami last year, but that was Champ Gailey's offense. Champ Gailey loves using one running back. So then Brian Flores comes out this year, as Miami has like a 2-headed offensive coordinator system. So Flores might have more say this year, and he comes out and says this is going to be a 3-headed backfield. And then he sends Myles Gaskin out there, not just in the second quarter, because he sent him in the second quarter, and that's bad enough. But that second quarter with the second team offense, he was out there with Jacoby Brissett. That's this wasn't a case of letting Tua get more run time with the offense. This was Myles Gaskin out there. Malcolm Brown, I gotta conflict with you here and say that Malcolm Brown looked exactly how he's always looked, which is slow, sluggish, and with no purpose on an NFL field. But he's out there, and he will be out there because he's a very likable guy. And same thing happened in LA. They're going to use him. He's going to get used on the goal line. He's going to be used in an infuriating amount where he's not going to do anything for fantasy, but he's going to take away from Myles Gaskin. So if Gaskin only has the passing down work in an offense that gained Will Fuller, Jalen Waddle, a couple more tight ends, all back in the passing game, maybe he's not going to catch the ball as much as we hoped. And I don't think the carries are going to be there. So I'm kind of hands off on Gaskin in these mid rounds. I wasn't really drafting him too much before in fear of this happening. I'm leaving my draft taking my last pick on Salvin Ahmed. I'm doing it like something there. I'm not paying up for Myles Gaskin this year. And I could eat crow here, but it's one of those players I'm willing to be wrong on.
It's a tricky one, but that's why I kind of like. I mean, if Gaskin falls enough over the next 2 weeks, like
sure, he's going in the top of the 6 right now. If he falls to he's going ahead of Kareem Hunt, Chase Edmonds, he's going ahead of Javonte Williams right now, which will flip. Yeah, but that'll flip. So let's say if he's going back to back with James Robinson, I just talked about how much I'll draft Etienne.
He's actually right there in that James Robinson kind of mindset for me. So
yeah,
definitely.
I'll take Robinson, in my opinion.
So let's go from one just absolutely horrible backfield situation to one that might be even worse. New England. Every year they do this to us. They got Damien Harris. He goes in the 8th round. I don't mind him there. Ramondre Stevenson ran a really long run, but his coaches have been telling him he sucks. Basically, there was a report that said a coach came out and said he needs to improve everything. I think that's been motivating him. James White is 900 years old, but will catch at least 60 balls. JJ Taylor, speedy guy. I think he's a special teams wizard. Sony Michel. I mean, the reports are that he's gonna mix in. Brandon Bolden is another kind of special teams darling, but I was just reading a report from the Boston Globe. Brandon Bolden, I think, is the odd man out. At one point, you were thinking Sony Michel was going to get cut. Have you updated your priors at all on that, or are you still thinking Sony Michel gets the axe?
I have been the long-standing person saying that Sony Michel gets cut. I have slightly adjusted that based on reports that he's been a little bit better this year. But I mean, this is how I view the roster. Damien Harris is a lock. James White is a lock. Ramondre Stevenson's a lock. So that's 3 players right there. They all provide different things. Which means this 4th player has to provide on special teams. I don't know if Ramondre Stevenson's going to provide on the special team. So let's say I think it's still realistic that JJ Taylor takes a 4th spot just to be a special teams ace. And I just don't think Sony Michel is going to factor in that much this year. And another one of my big takeaways, which is why I didn't bring it up in the beginning, I want to bring up here, was how good Damien Harris looked. Damien Harris looked out of a cannon. He looked great. And people do not care about it because of the one run that Ramondre Stevenson had in the last 2 minutes of the 4th quarter of week 1 of a preseason game against guys who are no longer on a roster. Ramondre Stevenson did great work on that play, not taking anything away from him. But we saw Damien Harris look good for 2 years now in the preseason. And then Bill Belichick does not play him at all. It's going to be the same thing for Ramondre. And Damien Harris is the guy to own here. I'm drafting Damien Harris in the back end of the 8th every single time. I think he's just got the talent. I think this is the year that Damien Harris is going to be used.
Yeah, and especially we didn't touch on Mac Jones as much, but if it's Mac there, Mac's job is going to get the ball. His job will be to get the ball close to the goal line, and then they're just going to ram it in with Damien Harris. I can definitely see that happening. And Ramondre Stevenson will probably mix in a lot in those goal line situations, which again kind of makes Damien Harris but if he's just lights out,
it's buying the talent. That's what you have to do when you're drafting Damien Harris.
Yeah, but also just to sprinkle in a little bit of extra insight for you guys back home before we sign off here. Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry, too cheap, both of them. those are the wide receiver 1s and 2s for New England. They're going to get a lot of high percentage like catches. Jonnu Smith is going in the 11th round. Like, I think he should go closer to like where Noah Fant goes. And Hunter Henry goes later. He goes in the 12th round. And like I said, I think he should go a little earlier than that. I kind of view Hunter Henry kind of closer to like a Dallas Goedert range, which we didn't touch on. Not great for Dallas Goedert, but little tight end talk. Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry, like, there's a reason they paid a lot of money for both of them.
They're going to draft them. Yeah. They're going to creatively use Jonnu in spaces that you wouldn't normally use a tight end in, and I am excited for that. And what I think has held their ADPs back, besides obviously each other eating into their upside, they're both dealing with injuries. Jonnu's dealing with an ankle sprain, which I think he's had, I don't know, give or take for the last 4 years of him continually dealing with ankle sprains. And Hunter Henry's dealing with a little shoulder issue. I don't think either are issue of missing long time, but those injuries are going to keep them from their ADP rising. So I'm fine taking a shot on either because the value's there. Also, shout out to Jacoby Myers for making an unbelievable catch in week 1 last week that Bill Belichick did not challenge. Jacoby Myers is a good player. That's also worth a late round flyer as well.
Yeah, but definitely if I miss out on Mark Andrews and Hawkinson, who's kind of like, that's who I want to get in drafts as my tight end. If I miss out on them, I'm basically like ignoring the position until rounds 10 through 12 and trying to get Hunter Henry or Jonnu, and then I'll kind of make it work from there. Because I think those are guys that might be able to get you into the top half of your league as far as tight ends go, tight end scoring goes, if things break right for them. But you don't have to pay that much for them. But let's sign it off.
For sure.
Mike.
Yeah, no, definitely. And thank you guys for tuning in. We had a little bit of a longer one today, but we can't get enough of it. It is. Short yardage, we're going to have to change the name to long yardage. But I had a great time. I want to quickly take a moment to talk about our draft guide that For Fantasy Sake put out. I know Nick worked very hard on it. I worked on it a little bit, putting on some wide receiver sleepers. That thing is a behemoth. That is a very long 47-page thing. And I don't mean that as an intimidating thing. What you do with a long document like that is you're on the clock and you're like, wow, I need to know something about this name. You search them up by name. I want to know Travis Etienne. You read an article about him being a sleeper. You hear something about him being a breakout. You see where he's in our ranks. This is a draft guide that I know Nick, Deej, Doug, everyone has put a lot of time and effort into it. So I appreciate anyone who checks that out. You want to speak on that a little bit, or is that covering it?
Yeah, you covered it all. Great draft guide. Make sure you check that out. Every format for all the popular platforms are in the database that I provided a link to. Those update with ADP. So like we catch things like Myles Gaskin's falling in ADP. That's going to be reflected in my rankings. So you're not going to get Myles Gaskin's because we're going to avoid him right now is kind of what I'm saying. So some more content coming from us here. Other than the draft guide, we're going to be doing a little bit more auction and Superflex content because those seems to be gaining some popularity, and there's not a whole lot out there on the popular platforms. So look for a Superflex article from me early next week, and you can find that and some other Twitter tidbits at run_the_Sims. You can find both Mike and I at forfantasysakeqc.com and follow them at FFSQC on Twitter, and hit the merch store. Mike, take us out.
Yeah, no, and that's covering it all right there. Thank you guys for tuning in. You can follow me at Michael Sicoli, as simple as that, name right down there. You can follow Nick Roll right there, Run the Sims, just like you mentioned. We appreciate all the support. Thank you guys for tuning in. We got Eagles Patriots on right now. Let's get to that.
Let's go get it. Let's go get it. Later, guys.
Have a good night, everyone.